Today we're talking about general patterns in numbers, and today we want to look at several general patterns. General patterns can oftentimes be called rules, sometimes they could be called properties like the distributive property, which you've probably heard of, and then sometimes general patterns can also be made into formulas. Today we're going to be talking about how you can make general patterns in words, so I'm going to start off by putting one in words, and this is a general pattern in numbers that you probably already know, but if I take any number and I multiply by 0, any number multiplied by 0 will equal what? I bet you know the answer, and that is 0. Any number multiplied by 0 will equal 0. So that's a general pattern with numbers. Now, I could write that in words like I just did, or I could write it as a number sentence using variables. And if I'm using variables, I'm just going to choose the variable n for just number. So any number multiplied by 0 will equal 0. So now I've written that general pattern as a number sentence as well using a variable where that variable n can equal any number. So I have it in words, any number multiplied by 0 will equal 0, and I also have it written as a number sentence, n times 0 equals 0. That is a general pattern. Now within general patterns there are things called special cases as well. If I have a special case of this number pattern, that is when I get specific and I actually use numbers. So I'm going to plug in actual numbers to test this general pattern. So for my variable, let's just try 3. So 3 times 0 equals 0. Okay, that works. Let's try 7. 7 times 0 equals 0. Let's try 10.5. 10.5 times 0 equals 0. So a special case is just testing out the general pattern. Now when you create special cases, you generally want to keep them with numbers you can know and use so that you can test to see that the general pattern is true. So we have the general pattern. Any number multiplied by 0 will equal 0. We have it written as a number sentence, and then we have our special cases. Let's take a look at a little bit more complex one and going from special cases to a general pattern. Okay, so now let's look at some special cases and see if we can figure out the general pattern by looking at these special cases. So I've got 3 special cases here of a general pattern. The first one says 1/2 of 4 equals 4 divided by 2. Then 1/2 of 12 equals 12 divided by 2. And then 1/2 of 22 equals 22 divided by 2. And if we did the math, we could check and see that all those things would work out, where if I have 1/2 of 4, let's see, that would be 2, and then 4 divided by 2 is 2, and you would see the same thing for the other ones as well, where I'd have 6 and 6, because 1/2 of 12 is 6, and 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 1/2 of 22 is 11, and 22 divided by 2 is 11. So I can see that these general patterns work out. But now what I want to do is kind of figure out what is the general pattern, and to do that I need to look at kind of what's the same, what do all 3 of these special cases have in common. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and highlight the things that they have in common. I notice that right away they all begin with 1/2. So this 1/2 is something that they all have in common. I notice that they have the word of all in common. I notice that they have the equal sign in common. And then I also notice the division and the 2 are the same with all 3 special cases. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the things that they have in common to come up with the general pattern. So let's go ahead and try to write this as a general pattern written in, let's go with just an equation to begin with. So let's say I have all my special cases begin with 1/2. So I'm going to start my general pattern with 1/2. Then they all have the word of. And the next spot is where they differ, so I'm going to just leave that blank. And then they all have the equal sign. They all have the next thing different, so I'm going to leave that as a blank. And then I have divided by 2. So 1/2 of something equals something divided by 2. Well, I want to make sure my somethings are the same between the equations. So let's go back in and look at these. So I notice that this is 4 and 4. So that's the same number. 12 and 12, that's the same number. And 22 and 22 is the same number. So I can represent those with the same variable. So I'm just going to once again use n. So 1/2 of n equals n divided by 2. So that is how I could represent those special cases as a general pattern written as a number sentence. Now let's try to write that in words. So if I have 1/2 of a number, so let's just start that. 1/2, I'm just going to kind of go along with the written number sentence. 1/2 of a number, and we could say it's equal to, is the same as. I'm going to go with it, is the same as, because there's different ways you could write it in words. Is the same as, and then I'll just go with dividing that number by 2. So now I have the general pattern as a number sentence, 1/2 of n equals n divided by 2. And then I also have it in words where I have 1/2 a number is the same as dividing that number by 2. So I have it in words, I have it as a number sentence, and then I have my special cases. Good luck in your work today.